Hi, my name is Gerhard Gschwandtner. I'm the founder and publisher of Selling Power magazine, and I'm honored to introduce two guests for this webinar today, Danny Tomsett and Andrew Quinn. And the objective for this webinar is for you to gain a fresh perspective on what it means to improve performance with simulations that are driven by AI. Danny, why don't you start introducing yourself?
Great. Well, thank you, Gerhard. It's wonderful to be here. So my background, I've started as an engineer, but quickly moved into sales, and from there have run several companies and scaled various size sales teams in those companies. And through that, I've certainly enjoyed the challenges and the rewards that come with sales, and really excited today to be part of the conversation and talking about how AI is going to change the game for sales. So that's me.
Thank you, Andrew.
Sure, I've been in sales my entire career. Sold a lot of different things for very large companies, very small companies. My last job in that was working for HubSpot. I joined that company when it was about 60 people, and I was involved in sales training, sales enablement, leadership development, and I managed to ride that all the way through to when it was a $2 billion company and a $32 billion market cap. And now I just do advising and coaching with various organizations in the tech space around sales, sales enablement, and leadership.
Well, Andrew, since you have such an amazing background with a world-leading company, maybe you can answer the first question and share your perspective about what is the current state of sales training. And the follow-up question will be, why are the traditional solutions and even some of the newer solutions falling short on the market today?
You know, it's an interesting question. There's been a lot of interesting development, I would say, in the infrastructure for knowledge transfer, right? Because when I think about the core things that someone needs to do as a seller, they need to have knowledge, they need to have the skill, and then they need to have the will, right? The motivation, the drive, all those things to do what's required in selling. And there's a lot of innovation that's happened in that knowledge transfer, right? And analytics around it, whether it's things like HubSpot for sales enablement, other types of platforms like Gong, Chorus, Exec Vision, and understanding what's going on in the call and analyzing what's transpiring. That's all really impressive. But from the training standpoint, like, the real issue is, how do we get people to adopt these repeatable behaviors that produce predictable outcomes? Because ultimately what it comes down to is sales is a physical thing, and we need to get people to adopt these physical behaviors that are going to yield predictable outcomes in our business. And ultimately, whenever we're doing anything physical, it requires practice to get good at it. That's why I think sports end up being such a sort of metaphor for sales, is because it has a lot to do with that repetitiveness and refining your motion, right, to get the outcome. And where I think a lot of things tend to fall short in the sales training game is in the practice piece. Like, how do we actually get people to practice in a scalable way that allows them to adopt the behaviors with efficiency? That's still exceptionally hard. I did it manually as a sales trainer at HubSpot in the early days. It's like I role played literally hundreds of times in a month, because that was my job, right? With salespeople, bringing them up to speed, getting on sales calls and engaging with all that, and helping them adopt those behaviors. Because that's ultimately what it comes down to, is getting people to take a value story, take an approach for whether it's like setting an agenda, handling objections, running a discovery, demonstrating value. Those are all things I need to learn, and just knowing them isn't enough to do them. It's like reading about riding a bike versus actually getting on it and trying it when I've never done it before. That's still a big gap that I see, is that those mechanisms to create practice in a way that is not onerously expensive inside the organization.
And maybe I want to add is that there are different levels of proficiency when you practice. And Bryant University has done a study that in order for a salesperson to perfect the performance, they need to rehearse 35 times. That was the optimal. And a lot of salespeople practice only 2 or 3 times. Just imagine what your music would sound like if you had practiced your guitar only 3 times.
Sure. I mean, an interesting adage in musical practice, right? You've heard like practice makes perfect, but it's actually perfect practice makes perfect. So what is perfect practice?
Yeah.
Right? And to your point, like 35 rounds of practice to get a particular skill under your feet. Like, who are they practicing with? Either a rep just like them who doesn't know what they're doing, or we've taken a rep off the floor to practice with who's now not out chasing their quota, or a sales manager who's got a variety of other things that they're responsible for. It's no surprise that they only get 2 or 3 cycles of practice when they're working with somebody else, because sales is a physical thing done with other people. I need to practice the interactions.
So maybe, Danny, you can share your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I love what Andrew just shared. I think, experience from my side started with just the nature of our own business and realizing, we invested huge amounts of time, money, and resources in sales playbooks, setting up the process, the onboarding. The information wasn't the problem. It was how people absorb the information. I think, probably the common theme of what we'll be talking about is around practice, right? The effectiveness of practice is just not many other analogies, whether it be sports, music, whatever, that you would sit back and go, just reading the book, just getting the information is going to make you great. It just doesn't. And so it's crazy to think how we expect that across, our broader sales teams, that they'll just get it and do it. And as sales leaders, you sit on calls and sometimes you cringe. And honestly, I've had too many cringe moments, and I'm sitting there going, where does that come from? Like, we've had the playbook. You don't even use the playbook. And I'd much rather, people feel safe to practice than these kind of high stakes, either role play with me or your sales leaders, because there's the judgment thing in there. There's reasons why it doesn't work, or not just time. I think there's emotional reasons, there's judgment reasons, but also just the nature of, like we've talked about, the accessibility of that too. I think, we're busy. Salespeople got quotas to hit. Sales leaders have got to do so much. And so you've got to think about what it is that practice looks like in a more convenient way as well, like accessible and the time that works for you. Normally, when you're involving other humans, you've got to make everyone's schedule work as well. And I think that's another factor. So that's, I think, a big part of the stake today is we're firing things more like a shotgun rather than a sniper rifle. And I think the most effective strategy is going to be laser sight focus on what you need to be better at what you do. And the last thing I would say is a big part of my passion is always build things from the bottom up, which is, you could convince sales leaders all day long, but if the sales people themselves don't engage and don't get value out of it, I don't think it's ever going to work, which is the current state. I would say 90+% of training materials, focus, things that we're putting in front of them don't get the level of engagement and impact because they just, as Andrew said, they don't have that motivation. I just don't think it gives them enough value for themselves to see the value that that has for them, at least over a long period of time as well. So that's where I think the current state of play is.
I think there's another way to look at it. What is really difficult is the day-to-day practice. There are so many demands made on the salesperson. And I want to track back to what Andrew said a minute ago. It's perfect practice that makes a perfect performance. So, Danny, how can technology help deliver that opportunity to practice consistently?
Well, I think we live in a very exciting time because this is where I think artificial intelligence is going to have some of its biggest and most immediate impact in the workplace. And this is really about 2 areas of practice, right? First, you need to be able to feel like you're getting feedback in a real-time interaction. That means emotion needs to be involved. You need to be able to have, meaningful contextual conversation. And then the second part of that is the coaching. Like, you need to be able to get insights and feedback in a way that you really can have some level of expertise that is saying, hey, these things you're doing really well, these things you could work on, this is how you get better. When we think about perfect practice, like, I think it's more around not just the repetition, as Andrew was highlighting, it's really about the environment of being able to really bring you more enlightened self-awareness as much as it is the techniques as well. Like, these are the things that you do well. Did you know that you do these things? Do you know you're not actually curious enough in this? You can go deeper, and I think that's where artificial intelligence, before that, we couldn't do any of these things. Artificial intelligence gives us language, it gives us the functionality to really simulate conversation and analyze and provide a lot of, I think, what we would call like expert data in behind the coaching, so that you're getting the best coaching at any time on your computer or mobile device that works for you.
But I think also technology has the advantage that of convenience and speed. Like if you want to practice baseball, you have to get in the car, go to the park, and then make time for the cage, and then play and practice, and then go home. Whereas as a salesperson, if you want to prepare yourself for a call and practice, you just turn on your computer and hit.
But if I can add something in there, like if we think about an amateur ball player, I think you're right, Gerhard. But if you're a professional ball player, practice is built into your incentives. Like, it's built into the game, right? In fact, practice is easy because you're already at the park and the batting cages are there and the pitching machines are there, and all those things are provided for you, and it feels real. And that's, I think, the hard thing in selling, is that the pathway to practice is tough. I need to find somebody else to practice with. Right. And a lot of times the organization is not creating an incentive structure that puts you in place to want to practice. Because that's another piece of this, is it needs to be easy. There needs to be a low friction level for the act of practice. And it also needs to be baked into what I'm doing as part of my organization. Because if the organization isn't allowing for it, because ultimately, right, salespeople, and this, I apologize, I'm a little callous with this, but like, they are the most measured people inside a company. Like, it's really clear what they're producing for an organization, and that's measured in money. And salespeople are compensated, typically associated with what they produce. So they're looking for the path of least resistance to $1, because that's how they're measured, right? And if practice is not something that's adding to their ability to close today, make money today, if they don't look at that and say, this practice is real and it's effective and it's helping me make more money more easily, they're not going to do it. That's why role play is so difficult, because it's fraught. It's not all that enjoyable. It's a loaded situation. I'm role playing with my manager. My manager's judging me. That doesn't feel like practice. That feels like an evaluation, right? How's that going to make me more successful? Like, there's a lot of friction involved in the current state of practice, in my opinion.
Yeah, what you're saying is that the psychological barriers, and salespeople are afraid of making a fool of themselves. And then there is also the issue in the salesperson's head, because every salesperson knows that there's a difference between intended behavior in a situation and actual behavior. And as Danny said earlier, salespeople trip and they go on sidetracks, and that is not conversation master. So Andrew, let's focus on what does good sales practice and training look like in today's world, and what are the performance metrics that we need to look at?
So I think ultimately really good sales training and practicing associated with that is only as good, candidly, as your sales process and your sales methodology, right, in my opinion. And I think about those in two different ways. Those words tend to be problematic because we tend to use them interchangeably, but I'm a big believer that sales process is, what am I supposed to do at each step, right? I have my research step, what do I do, my approach step, my initial connect step, my discovery, my value proposition, my close. My methodology is how am I doing things in each one of those steps? Like, how am I actually conducting my discovery? How am I actually conducting my objection handling, so on and so forth? If you don't have those two things, practice is really difficult. It's one of the things we did at HubSpot as an example. We were very, very focused on what are the repeatable behaviors that are going to produce predictable outcomes in our business, and then how do we bake those into each step and then train people how to apply those. So we knew what our process was, we knew what the methodology was, how would they do it, and then how do we actually create repeatable practice opportunities so they can do that. Those two things need to be in play. Once those are clear, then you can start to think about, well, what are the different methods in which I can create practice? But you still run into this, not just mental limitation that you brought up, like the charged nature of it, but there's also the physical aspect of it, right? I need to have somebody else to practice with, right? And the state of simulation, I think, is getting to the point where that becomes a lot easier, because it used to be it's either with my manager, it's with a peer, it's with another rep, it's with a buddy I might have been assigned to, but that takes somebody else's time. You need to find that person, or that person needs to be dedicated to doing that. Or there may be a sales trainer or a sales coach, but that person is expensive, and how much can they actually do that, and how spread are they? So like, really, I think there's a cool opportunity in front of us to create an environment where practice is on demand, practice feels real, right? The simulations are genuinely real. The avatar acts the way that our prospect would act. And given the fact that so many people are recording calls now, the corpus exists, right, to say, hey, here's my prospect sounds like, and tune something to sound like my prospect. I'm a big believer that we're on this cusp of mechanisms that will allow us to actually develop the skill and apply it in ways that aren't out in the field, because that's the other way we practice, is on the pipeline, right? It's learn on the job. Like in sales, that's dangerous. Because you're practicing with the pipeline, which means you're setting it on fire until you get good at it.
So, Danny, why don't you carry the ball a little further down the line here? The issue that Andrew raised was the limitations of practice with humans. Now, a lot of our viewers don't know the limitations of practicing with AI, because there are solutions out there where salespeople say, I don't want to practice with a creepy avatar. And so how do you help people differentiate between what is a bot or a deep fake or a digital human?
Yeah, I think we go back to the fundamentals of what makes for good practice, right? We always need to start from there, because if it's whether it's an avatar or even a voice or whatever that might look like, if it's creepy and it's off-putting, it's not helping you learn anything. You're kind of just reacting to this weird thing, right? It's not gonna give you the focus you need. And I think in a lot of the scenarios, whether it's laser sight on like closing techniques, or whether it's following the playbook and the different process stages of discovery, etc., you want the sales rep to feel comfortable in the interaction, so that they can just focus on what feels natural, which is reading the customer cues, like listening to what they're saying, really using that information to connect with what they know will progress this to the next stage. And all these different things are well understood in sales, so we don't want the digital human or the avatar to get in the way of that. And so when we did a lot of research behind this, there's terms like uncanny valley, there's deep fakes, there's all sorts of these different things. And we've spent a lot of years in research and development before we even moved into this product, which was just focused on a digital human that feels really natural to interact with. And so that was the first and foremost, is like, how do you create more aliveness? That's the word we use. So it doesn't have to be photo real. In fact, that can sometimes add some level of creep, So we just use CGI at very high fidelity. We'll do a demo shortly and so everyone can see, but it's more around the aliveness. It's, you know, indications of listening, moving. Deepfakes tend to be very still or very on loop. So we wanted to use something that just really interacted in a more natural and human way, that felt alive, that had a personality. And when you create the scenarios, you're able to actually think about what are the cues for this customer? Are they cold? Are they very skeptical? Are they warm? And they're like, they're going to be the easiest pitch of your life, you know, like let's do level 1 here. So all these things matter in the way that you practice and the way that this technology needs to be effective. And so that's
if I can add one other point really quickly, Danny, too, it's like the responses need to be, it can't be the same every time, right? Because if the rep's practicing and it's exactly the same response every time, you're not learning from that, because people aren't like that. Like every sales call I enter, there'll be slight variations in the way people communicate, right? And how do you create an environment where, based on what I say as the rep, it may adjust the response I get from that avatar so that it feels more real? Because the minute it feels canned every time, the utility is quick.
Yeah, I would assume also that every scenario is different, every conversation is different. So what, describe the power, before we see the demo, the power of a scenario-based role play.
Yeah, so I guess the power of a scenario-based role play is that it's relevant. So, you know, so you're creating something that is not just about honing in the skills, but it may not be exact. It's kind of like the batting cage. It's not like standing out on the diamond and you're about to be in front of 60,000 people. Maybe that's a little different. But ultimately, you know, you're still getting something that is going to be very similar to what you're about to face. And that's really the power of setting that scenario, is the flexibility in creating something that's dynamic but relevant to what you're about to go into, so you can really hone those skills and evaluate how you're doing. I think that's the power.
Awesome. Andrew, do you want to add something before we see the demo?
No, I think let's dive in. Let's take a look.
All right.
All right, let's bring it up. Okay, so I'm going to talk over this just for the first part, so everyone can understand what's going on. So within our sales trainer, you can obviously use single sign-on, connect in, and from here, this is what a sales rep would be able to see. So they will have the different scenarios that are created either by their sales leaders, sales enablement teams, and they'll be published once available, and different teams will have access to different information. So this one is a closing time sales trainer. It's one for our internal team. If they're pitching to a customer, this is closing time. So they have the instructions and the goals, and they read through that, they understand what that is.
Hey there, great to see you again.
Hi Anita, great to see you too. How are you going today?
I'm doing all right, just trying to survive the Texas heat.
Absolutely. Hey, thank you for your time, Anita. Just following up on the back of our product demonstration last week, I sent through that pricing information, and I'd love to kick off just to get your thoughts on how you found the demo, and specifically if you've got any questions around the pricing.
Yeah, I took a good look at the pricing, and I gotta say, it's a bit steeper than I was hoping for.
No, thanks for that. That's good to know. We'll unpack that in a second. Let's start with the demo. Were there any parts of that that maybe weren't so convincing for you that we could walk through?
Well, I was really intrigued by the simulation aspect, but I'm still wondering how it'll actually impact our sales team's performance in the real world.
Okay, well, we weren't going to do the full interaction. It'll take too long. So we've now kind of summarized the interaction takes place, and now we can load up the analytics for the individual, so that, you know, Jono's done his practice and we can see which goals he's attained, and we can actually go into coaching, and each coaching area gives you a grade, so you can see the numeric numbers, but then it breaks down what you did well, where you can improve and some really good examples and some suggestions. So you can just go back and do it again and again and really refine against those suggestions and that coaching assistance. So that's from a rep side. If you're a team lead or a sales leader, you can also look across information. So if it's something that obviously the reps have made public, you can now look at this and see how they're performing. What are the areas that you could support them in regarding potential areas where they could be improving? It could be in product knowledge, could be in discovery techniques. So this is a really helpful way of getting a broader view of the areas of focus inside training versus just trying to train everyone on the same things, individual tailored training plans that you could put in place as a sales leader. So very quick overview, but it gives everyone on the webinar a better idea of what we're talking about.
You know, Gerhard, having spent some time with these simulations, right, and having sold a lot and trained a lot of salespeople, the thing that really struck me was genuinely how real it felt. Like I could feel my anxiety welling up as I'm facing an objection, and I'm like, how am I going to handle that, right? And then going back and doing it again and seeing a slightly different response from the avatar, like as I change my approach. That's it, man. Like that's what it needs. You need to feel that it's real, and I got that feeling in spades when I did it.
I would just say too, like I'm the founder of this company. I normally rate myself to sell my own products. I was doing these scenarios and humbled at the level of improvement I could actually make based on what it was feeding me back, and it was good. Like it was really good. It was like, hey, you're doing these things, but you know, you missed a couple of opportunities. And when you start now going into calls and thinking about that, you really are better at what you do. And so, you know, those things just increase my conviction even more on how effective this will be for reps.
Yeah, it really changes your perception of the potential of improving, because if you don't practice, you don't know that you can get better. And a lot of people think they're good with what they have, and they're self-satisfied. But I think when you're in this digital batting cage, you know, I give you one example. When COVID started, I amused myself learning chess because I wasn't outside. I thought I gotta create something, and it is amazing how when you practice with a digital tool that teaches you the moves, how fast you can progress. Yes. And but you need to keep with it. Your perfect practice makes perfect. There are some audience questions. Are there any companies currently using digital humans?
Yes, absolutely. You know, we've got well over 50 customers now. If you go to our website, you can see some of the brands that are already on there. Yeah, I mean, we've just started, so it's early, but we're pretty excited with the feedback, and we've got a big roadmap, as you can imagine, on where we want to take this product.
How do we input our product into this tool?
I think that's probably a discovery call, one that you could probably go through the website, and the team would be happy to have those kind of discussions to see if there's any opportunities to do that.
Yeah, maybe we can share the slide how people can get in touch with you and book a demo. Yeah. Next question: how many languages can it speak? Good question.
Yeah, so the technology itself, when we built that, it supports over 74 languages and growing. The product, the sales trainer product today is English only. And the reason being is because it's not just about a conversation in a language. We need to do the analysis and the coaching. That it needs to be all localized to be effective. So currently today, only English on the sales trainer, but we definitely are taking inquiries to better understand what the next language needs to be.
Cheryl, my friend, she's asking, how long does it take to set up and train the personas, and who does this work? Us or an SME from UneeQ?
Great question. So even I can do these scenario creations. It takes, I think if you invest 45 minutes, you can do a really good one. If you invest probably 2 hours, it's like incredible. So it is all configurable inside the administration for a team leader or an admin, and anyone can do it and be trained to do it. Our team, customer success team, are also on hand to support and obviously create them as well and help fine tune to get the best results. We're super focused right now on making sure that the sales reps are getting value, so we will handhold wherever anyone needs handholding.
Here's another great question. How can the solution flex across different sales methodologies? I love that question.
Yeah, I do too. So it can, and today we actually create what's called flexible assessment criteria. So if you run your own rubric or you're running different sales methodologies, we can actually create individual assessment criteria that ensures that you're following that methodology and that process based on the interaction in the simulation. We want to hope to expand on that even more to actually have certified pre-loaded assessments that could come in, and we're opening up conversations with those obviously methodology companies today, and welcome any conversations if anyone's on the webinar and interested.
Next question, obviously important. How much does it cost?
Yeah, so good news is that you can actually start straight away on a free trial, so it costs $0 to actually prove this out. So if you're interested, the QR code's there. We'd love companies to jump on, give us feedback. We're excited to get sales reps using it. And then it will move up at a $25,000 per year is our base, and it will serve a lot of businesses at that price, and obviously the large organizations, it will grow from there.
It's a fraction of a sales trainer. I've seen a lot of.
They paid me. That's a lot cheaper.
I've seen a lot of demos that look like this one. What are your differentiators beyond all the others?
Well, I think we've looked pretty closely at a lot of the competition, and I would suggest that one of the key elements to this working well is the digital human interaction itself. How fast, how real time, how emotional, responsive. When you look at how good this gets, and also what we're about to roll out in the next few months, there's even more animation behaviors and things like that that really simulate what you'll expect when having a conversation. Good examples are things like, as you're talking, how's the digital human reacting and changing in that? And those things are just non-existent with any competitor today. Then you combine that with the fact that we're focused on a bottom-up approach in our design, so we really think about adding value for the rep. How does the rep get more value out of this? How do they practice without having to post everything up to leadership? All these things matter and get more engagement, and I think that's what's most effective. But yeah, real time's hard. So if you actually look and try any other products, you realize that we'll be quite far ahead in the actual real-time interaction, especially that.
If I may add something, my own personal perspective is I've looked at 26 different tools in this space. And the reason I like yours is I think it is much smoother, and smooth is fast and it helps development. It's not just a training tool, but it also is a coaching tool, because you can ask the avatar about just about anything and you can train it to contain your entire library of solutions. But then there's something else, which is you are going to develop a library of best practices that your salespeople create and add to the content, so that you can literally capture the collective intelligence of your company in UneeQ. And that's what I think makes UneeQ unique.
If I can add one other opportunity in there too, like at some point, you need to change your value story, right? It's going to happen. And how do you test the story? Like now we go out and we do focus groups, and we go out in the field and we see how the sales story lands. Now you've got an environment that reflects your prospects. So you can test your new value stories in this environment and refine them before you even bring them out into market, and the odds of it landing go. Like there's a lot of different ways this can be used when you think about the dynamics of interaction and the repeatable behaviors that produce predictable outcomes, and how do I actually scale those? I'm excited about it personally. I think it's unbelievable.
So one more question. Can we customize the evaluation parameters for the role plays?
Yeah, you can. I mean, that's one of the advantages of the flexible assessment way that we've set that up, so that you can do that, which I love that, because, you know, businesses are different, methodologies are different, playbooks are different. So, and I also like that you can stream. I was talking to a coach actually yesterday, and he's like, I just want to focus on this one thing. I don't need all this information. I just want the rep focused on doing this one thing. So I built this today, a streamline, so it's just focused on a very narrow simulation and assessment area, so that you can just hone in on those skills. And I think that's also really powerful.
Well, we still have questions flooding in. Are you able to apply this technology to coaching demos and whiteboards?
Definitely, from a conversational point of view, the roadmap will need to include other things like, you know, visual understanding, so cameras on, seeing what's happening. We're already in R&D on camera on for lots of reasons, and that could be a definite benefit. We're also looking at, you know, PowerPoints and other things, and helping assess, you know, a sales pitch with presentation skills as well. So lots to come in the roadmap, but today it's all just in what you've seen, just the conversational interaction.
Could you publish a leaderboard where you publish every week the top 3 practices that everybody can learn from?
Everyone's talking about leaderboards. I love leaderboards, and I love the gamification that we're rolling out soon. So today you can actually do that. You would be able to manage that as a sales leader, but we want to build more of that in the app and create more gamification and competition. But equally, on the other side of that, we really value the sales reps also being able to just practice with no one looking. They can just get better and just use it for their own benefit without the sales manager watching everything, other than knowing that they're using it, basically. And I think that's been a big amount of feedback for us. So that's where we're going on those 2 areas.
There are 2 more questions. Are there any minimum team size requirements, and how many users can connect together?
There's no real minimum, although I would say that what we've learned from our customers and having conversations is the more reps you have, the harder it is to sit on calls and get across role play and do these things. So we tend to have customers more likely 20 reps and above that are buying this solution. It doesn't mean that if you're smaller you couldn't, but that would definitely, you know, need to connect to how much pain are you experiencing with training, practice, things like that, that your leaders can't get across a smaller team today.
One more question. How can people get in touch with you, Danny?
Best way to get in touch with me is LinkedIn.
Okay.
And you can find me on LinkedIn, or yeah, LinkedIn's probably best. Just direct message me on LinkedIn.
I manage about 75 sales reps across 2 different regions. How many sales reps can be accommodated by this? And can you distinguish regions? Interesting.
Yeah, you could do that. And I think you create multiple teams inside your company profile, and you'd manage it that way. Size-wise, I mean, we're talking to a customer of 20,000 reps right now. And we've definitely built it for that level of scale. We have a lot of large customers. You'll see some of them on our website, and so you'll see the scale of some of the clients we're talking with.
I have one more technical question. What is the core AI technology that you're using to create the AI personas?
So we have our own proprietary AI, which we've invested over $30 million in already to date, and that drives a lot of the personality, animation, visual side of what we do. So that's our core tech. That's where we started building that tech. And then around that, as you can imagine, there's a lot of the AI ecosystem, whether it be voices, large language models, some of the other things that support their overall experience. And we don't expose all the models and what that looks like, although I will say that some of our larger enterprise customers have select models that they only use, and we're able to support a lot of those customers today by just using those models that they've already pre-approved or already hosted in their infrastructure.
I've one more final question. Why did UneeQ change from digital human first to sales trainer first company?
That's a good question. It's a great question. I actually did a podcast this morning answering that in a much longer form. But,
oh, really?
But I would say that when we created Digital Humans, it came off a conviction that I believe that the way that we will experience AI will be far more human in the future. And you've seen that start to eventuate, whether that be Siri, Alexa, but it will become more visual. Websites will become more interactive and dynamic based on conversation rather than you trying to click through and search. Because of that foundational belief, I built a platform first, which was Digital Humans, to create the best real-time interactive technology in the market. And then it can be an ingredient in anyone's use case. It just so happened that we discovered that we were doing more and more training use cases with clients, and particularly in sales training. And so we then refined the strategy to become a sales training product company with a platform that's available still for anyone to build their own experiences, but the sales training focus is certainly an exciting product for us.
That's awesome. Andrew, you are the sage on the stage. How would you summarize that webinar? I'm blown away because we planned for a 30-minute webinar. It's 42 minutes now, and there's still people in the audience captivated. How would you describe, what's the secret sauce? What did we do well here, and what can we improve next?
I mean, I think ultimately, the fact that we're having the conversation, right? Because I don't think that actually happens enough. Like, I advise a number of organizations, and I'm just stunned at the degree to which it's, people come into the organization and, they're shadowing others, or the degree to which people are actually practicing on their pipeline, like those things that are actually adversely affecting the outcomes in your business. It's just stunning to me where that still is at. And I'm genuinely excited about this. Like, the way I met Danny is this idea occurred to me, is like, all these people exist to create this. And a CEO of another company I know introduced me to Danny, and he and I had an initial conversation about where this is going to go. And both of us were like, yeah, this is really exciting. Having lived in the trenches for so long, trying to change behavior, and it takes way longer than anybody believes it does. Like, to just read this PowerPoint, get this story under your feet, go out and do it in the field, like, that's, at best, you might get 10 or 15% of your sales force to adopt that and do it right. The other 85% are going to be making mistakes to some degree, to Danny's point, those cringy moments. And I think we have a huge opportunity to diminish that and create just an easier path for people. If they're happier and more effective and taking these things on faster, like, the organization wins. And I think tools like this just stand to really change the game around all of that. I think we're at the beginning of a really interesting age.
I predict, Danny, I don't know your product roadmap, but I predict that within the next 2 years, you're going to have 5 or 6 digital humans that are all specialists in a certain kind of performance, so that you have a listening avatar, or a digital human better, or you have a pitch digital human that you can practice with, that you have more, that you almost have a university of digital humans available to the salesperson to help them focus in on what they need to do better.
Absolutely.
Am I reading you right?
Yeah, I think I definitely think already you see the demand for accessible coaching as much as practice as well. And so I don't think it's not even 2 years away. I think you'll probably see by the end of this year some coaches, digital human coaches, as part of the experience. And I think it's a great opportunity also for some of these organizations that have developed phenomenal sales methodologies and process to get on board with what we're doing, and work collaborative work on a coach together that we can make.
I think that every sales training company out there should have their own digital human on UneeQ.
Yeah, I think it's something we would love to talk about. So,
all right. Well, I want to thank the audience for your enthusiasm, for the great questions, and I want to thank Danny for sharing your demo. It was amazing. And Andrew, my hat's off to you. You have so much insight, so much to offer. Can people get in touch with you on LinkedIn?
Sure can.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.